Topping today's news, the need for COVID testing at the borders is about to be repealed. The Prime Minister speaks to President Biden about neglecting the Caribbean and public schools to get $50 grand for farming. Good evening, I'm Jcn Saunders, and this is your JCN Evening News. Thanks for joining us. Come this Sunday, June 19th, the travel health visa for international travel to enter the Bahamas will be a thing of the past. This news coming from Minister of Tourism, Investments and Aviation, Deputy Prime Minister Chester Cooper. During his contribution to the 2022-2023 national budget debate, the Deputy Prime Minister announced that the parameters put in place to mitigate the spread of COVID-19 will be done away with. The need for a travel health visa for Bahamians was scrapped late last year. The DPM announcing this move as he spoke to the state of tourism in the Bahamas.
Madam Speaker, as far as the tourism numbers are, we're still processing the May data. We hope to have that in the next few days. But I can say that foreign air and sea arrivals to the Bahamas from January to April this year totaled 1.9 million visitors. 1.9 million visitors. Of that number, just over to April. Of that number, over 460 visitors were stopover visitors. In April alone, we had 590,000 visitors by air and sea. Air and sea arrivals through April year to date were up to 950% over the same period in 2021.
Deputy Prime Minister Cooper also noting that the rules regarding air travel and the changing guidelines have reshaped the airline landscape, further adding that his ministry's goal is to encourage more flights to key markets to get more people here safely, quickly, and affordably while protecting public health. As for the tourism figures, the Deputy Prime Minister noting that from January to April 2022, there has been an almost 1,000% increase in arrivals to the Bahamas compared to the first 4 months of 2021.
Yes, I support the review of travel testing rules. We must continue to reduce the friction as we ramp up for the summer months. And therefore, Madam Speaker, I am pleased to announce that the Cabinet of the Bahamas has approved the elimination of the Bahamas travel health visa. This is going to take effect at 12:01 on Sunday, just in time for Father's Day.
However, the tourism minister contends that looking at the overall picture, the Bahamas gets less of the market share of Caribbean tourism than we did 20 years ago. Compared to our counterparts in the Caribbean, we are losing ground. He notes that official plans to reverse this trend of shrinking Caribbean market share in the next 5 years is underway. Following a meeting with United States President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, a greater bond is being forged between the Bahamas and the United States, this according to Prime Minister Philip Davis. The Prime Minister met his U.S. counterparts during his visit to Los Angeles, California, to attend the 2022 Summit of the Americas. Prime Minister Davis telling reporters on Tuesday that he had an opportunity to voice his concerns to the U.S. leaders regarding the relationship between both countries as well as CARICOM. He says talks were about the fact that we in the Caribbean felt truly neglected by the leader of the world, the United States. Prime Minister Davis says the outcome of the meeting left them feeling confident that neglect from the United States will be a thing of the past.
I was truly gratified by the responses we got, both from the Vice President and the President of the United States. They acknowledged that they have to reset our relationships, and there's been a commitment to do so. There are a number of outcomes from that summit that inspires me, gives me the optimism that we are now back in the relationship that we ought to be, and neglect will no longer be. Neglect will be a thing of the past.
Also coming out of that meeting, according to Prime Minister Davis, was technical and grant assistance set for the Bahamas by the United States as we adapt to the consequences of climate change. Meantime, in a meeting with Colombian President Ivan Duque Marquez during the Summit of the Americas, Prime Minister Davis expressed his displeasure to the president about a Colombian billionaire's failure to live up to promises made to develop some 1,000 plus acres of land on South Eleuthera. According to the Prime Minister Davis, the Colombian native has been living in the Bahamas for 20 years. The Prime Minister's comments come just 6 months after the Davis administration signed a heads of agreement with respect to the project, which is being backed by billionaire Luis Carlos Sarmiento.
As a result of that, he has indicated that he'll be making an official visit to the Bahamas sometime in early July, and he will bring that developer and he will go down there and make sure that it gets started somehow. So he's going to join me in ensuring that the threat becomes a reality.
The project, the Cotton Bay development, has been in the works for years, spanning multiple administrations and numerous heads of agreement announcements. Prime Minister Davis notes, in fact, that there is currently no penalty for foreign developers who come into the Bahamas, hoard land, and fail to live up to their promises. But he suggests that the Land Reform Committee may consider legislative changes to avoid such from happening.
When you had what we call the Immovable Properties Act that was enacted back in 76 under the previous Billings administration, penalties were embedded in acquisitions by foreign persons who promised to do things, and if they didn't do it, there were some penalties for not doing it. The International Land Holdings Act, which was passed by Ms. Dingle, those penalties lost its teeth. And so that is the situation as we are now. And we are going to see how we revisit these matters to ensure that foreigners just don't buy our land to hoard for their future generation, which are not Bahamians, but ensuring that it's to the benefit of our future generation.
As debate on the government's 2022-2023 budget continued on Tuesday evening, Minister of Transport and Housing Jobeth Kobe Davis revealed grandiose plans for the mainland of Abaco that was devastated during Hurricane Dorian. Marsh Harbor, the economic hub for the island, will get a much-needed boost. Kobe Davis shared a detailed diagram of what the new town center will look like in Marsh Harbor and commended former Prime Minister Hubert Ingram for his involvement.
Project plans for a new town center at Marsh Harbor, and I want to make it clear that this town center was gifted by the former Prime Minister and former Member of Parliament for North Abaco, the Right Honorable Hubert Ingram. Major elements of the town center will include a government complex, police and fire stations, a library, courts, mini hospital, amphitheater, central park, and a gymnasium.
Kobe Davis also informed that people on Abaco living in the emergency domes will soon be asked to leave those temporary structures, some of which are reportedly infested with mold. Dome City, as it is commonly known on Abaco, has been misused, with some people renting to individuals not related to the Dorian relief efforts, and reports of the domes being used as a brothel. Meanwhile, Keith Bell, Minister of Labor and Immigration, touting the government's efforts towards providing ease of doing business in relation to applying for labor certificates.
So we are now in the process where, Madam Speaker, persons and companies can now, from the comfort of their office, apply for and be issued with labor certificates. This is part, Madam President, of this New Day government of the ease of doing business in this country.
Any non-Bahamian national wishing to work in the Bahamas for a period longer than 90 days should apply for a labor certificate from the Department of Labor. Mr. Bell also spent a considerable amount of his speech exposing what he describes as wasteful spending by the former administration that allowed the Bahamian ambassador to Belgium to spend more than $500,000 to furnish a one-bedroom apartment during the pandemic. Opposition Deputy Leader and Member of Parliament for St. Barnabas, Shannon Dawn Cartwright, kicked off his budget contribution by speaking on the recent spike in crime in the country. Mr. Cartwright criticized the government's response to crime, stating that it is the primary responsibility of the government to keep its citizens safe. bringing up the lack of reassurance from the Bahamian people on the government's ability to address the issue.
Madam Speaker, we are in trouble, and our communities, neighborhoods, and schools are becoming increasingly unsafe. They become war zones, Madam Speaker, and too much grief is visiting our communities. This is not overreacting. This is not hyperbole. Madam Speaker, the solutions to crime are multifaceted and require the intervention of all of us. However, governments must lead. Bahamians note that the government has not announced one major, immediate, significant policy decision or long-term comprehensive plan to combat this menace to the Bahamian way of life, nor reassure the Bahamian people of their ability to address crime in our country. Madam Speaker,
addressing the severity of crime in the country at present, the St. Barnabas MP presented recent headlines, including incidents of crime being up by 18% and the heartbreaking shooting death of 13-year-old Quinton McKinsey just 2 weeks ago at a public park. He then weighed in on the government's plan to construct a new prison for $40 million.
And while no death is worth more than another, and life is worth more than the other, I should say, sorry. Boy 13, shot dead. Madam Speaker, the government has announced the plans to construct a $40 million prison. And while there does exist a need for such a facility, and the proposed policy focus to go along, and while arguments are accepted on its impact on rehabilitation and reducing recidivism, we must focus more on source public policies and programs that prevent individuals from being introduced to the prison system in the first place.
Mr. Cartwright says a comprehensive plan must be made if we are to achieve the goal of individuals receiving rehabilitation before committing offenses to land them back in prison. We'll take a break here. We'll be right back after these commercials.